Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at an extremely fun invasion. So I play on PlayStation, and on PlayStation you don't really encounter very many cheaters, but for me it's kind of like finding a four-leaf clover. It's extremely lucky because, you have this opportunity where if you lose, it's like, you lost to a cheater, that's fine. But if you win, you just beat a cheater. So like, you already are at such a huge disadvantage when you're invading because you have fewer heals than the host. They have the potential to have multiple summons come in, over-leveled phantoms potentially. You're really just at every disadvantage. So playing at a disadvantage is nothing new, and playing against somebody that's outright cheating is just, fantastic. It's a fun way to play the game. So we have this player, the Great Belal. Not sure if that's a reference to something, but it doesn't really matter. They're just running around with Bloodhound Step. They've got Power Stance Pikes. They're Bloodhound Stepping directly into Placidusac's Ruin. Just lots of fun stuff to go on right now. And you can see that we land a jumping attack that procs Madness at the same time, and that does about 2k damage. So 2k damage is quite a bit. I think the maximum HP you can have in the game is maybe something like 2500. But for this player, that jumping attack did, I don't know, just a small fraction of their HP bar. So that's a little bit odd. And I wasn't really paying attention to the numbers at this point, so I hadn't fully appreciated how much damage I was doing and how little of a percentage of their HP bar that damage was doing. It took me a minute, and there was kind of a lot going on. I was paying attention to my blood loss meter. The fact that they have Power Stance Pikes means you need to be really, careful with how you space and approach these types of situations. So understanding that this player was tanky was totally on my mind. I was questioning maybe they were a over-leveled phantom and I was not actually attacking the host. I really wasn't sure, but it did really clue me into the fact that they were cheating when they started to heal, because pretty much everybody at 125 has the maxed out Crimson Flasks where they do usually around half your HP when you use one, and here we can see them heal once, and it does a tiny fraction of their HP. So we'll see them heal 3 times in a row here, and we'll notice that that doesn't even get them back to full health. So where their HP bar is at is on a totally other level compared to mine. And what I think happened is they probably went onto Reddit one too many times. They saw the level vigor joke for like the 15,000th time, and they really just took it to heart. And so they're like, you know what, I need 10k vigor, and I think then I'll do well. So that's possibly where their mindset was at. It's hard to know for sure. The brain of a cheater is an interesting one for sure, and it's, we can just kind of take our best guesses. But kind of the approach that I would recommend when you're playing against a cheater, especially one like this, is you can go for things that do percentile type damage. So if you get a blood loss proc on a cheater, then it will do a percent of their health, which is going to be a much bigger fraction than just like a single hit. Also, if you use something like rot or poison, those are going to tick based on a percentage of their health as well, and those numbers will be bigger the bigger the HP bar is. So those are some good approaches. Also, frost procs are great. However, I don't know if this player is running infinite heals, so potentially another good option would be to use Blight, because Blight is going to do their entire HP bar in one go if you hit the proc, and that's kind of best case scenario, but I wasn't running a build with most of these tools. This was for a YouTube video, and so it wasn't really my full, I have access to a lot of silly things type build. Now, this host does have the blue ring on, which is an interesting choice. If 10k wasn't enough, a secondary player might be another good way to help them out as they take on the invaders of the world. But they are a little bit honorable in a kind of confusing way, where they let me just kind of face this blue one-on-one. And so I am actually able to get rid of this blue in that moment. Now, another element of cheating when you have max HP is that there are some types of moves that you can do to get that HP bar to go to 0 all in one go. And so what I'm trying to do is essentially herd cats. I know that there's a cliff very close to the edge here, and they Bloodhound Step over the edge in just one go. And here we can see they have over 5,000 health at just around half their HP bar. So cheater confirmed, and that's a great way to deal with them. If you can't do Blight, if you can't do Bleed, if you can't do Frost, why not do Gravity? So this next invasion is not a group of cheaters, however, it was a bit of a cheeky host. So this is going to be, I think this was a 15-minute invasion that I've trimmed down quite a bit. But this player is rune-arced, and they've got, 2 phantoms here. We do get an early proc on one phantom, and that's going to allow us to get the kill pretty pretty quickly, and we're able to move on with our day a little bit and continue this invasion. So here we get our FP back to full, and we see that there's some magic in the mist, so we do use Barrier of Gold. And we also have a player that's running Power Stance Spears, or Great Spears that is, so it's nice to see another PSGS player. You know, I wouldn't call that my main, but it does make this feel like a little bit more even of a fight if you have two PSGS players playing against each other. So I was kind of happy to see that, and you know, we also have the Power Stance Straight Swords from the host, which is an extremely strong setup as well. So really the damage potential is quite high in this particular invasion, and I do need to be careful. Barrier of Gold is definitely going to help me against the glintstone attacks from the host, but you can see as soon as one trade happens or I get hit, there's a big necessity to heal. And here we do see the host go for Grail's Roar, and that gives me just enough time to chase down the Phantom here. But you know, things are not over at this point. I've killed two Phantoms, there's one host left, they've got a Rune Arc, but they also have the blue ring on, so that means that some blues are going to potentially be coming into the world. And the Power Stance Straight Swords are, you know, on their own just quite strong. So I'm trying to go for either some anti-airs or just some kind of cheeky madness hits. Anything I can do to really get their madness meter up to full is going to be a great option for me. And you can also see me go for some talisman swaps. So when I knew that I was going to be going for some incantations, I wanted to buff those. And then when I wanted to go back to the Power Stance Great Spears, I wanted to buff my jumping attacks as well as counter damage with the Spear Talisman. So great option there. But at this point, we do have a blue coming in, and they do look like a wizard. So I go for Barrier of Gold for a second time, really want to ensure that I don't get blown off the map by some incoming cannon of Hyenas, and I, you know, try to dodge them as best I can. They do have a little bit of a delay, and I go for a jumping attack on that player because they do look a little bit squishy, but they manage to anti-air me with the Moon Veil. And at this point, we also see some extra spells coming in from the host, and I find that it's prudent to just run away a little bit, back off, let them use some of their FP. Sometimes it does feel like FP in this game is infinite, but deep down I try to remind myself that no, in fact, they do have a somewhat limited FP bar until they start going for those Starlight Shards. So I do manage to land a jumping attack. That does about half the health of this blue, and that gets me kind of aggressive, and maybe a little bit too aggressive, because while I was able to, you know, apply pressure with the element of the host in the mix, once a second blue comes in, it's a little bit too much. And this second blue that comes in is actually quite competent with their halberd. They're spacing well, they're timing well, they're adjusting to the turn and burns that I'm trying to go for, and it's not going to be a good play to try to dodge all the incoming magic as well as time and space this host, or this blue with the halberd rather. So you can see that they're also free aiming some frost pots, and those are very solid free aims. Like, one was off to the side, but that totally happens. That second one was very well aimed, and so that also clues me into the fact that this blue really does know what they're doing in terms of PvE. They're here with a very specific objective, and if I give them too much time and space, they're probably going to kill me. So what I need to do is get some PvE in the mix, and here we have quite strong PvE. You know, it falls to Moonveil rather quickly, but you know, it's still worth it to have at least the chaos. And here we get Barrier of Gold back on, just because I'm constantly aware of the potential chip damage from the other players. Like, I think that in a one-on-one with this player, I'll be able to beat them and, you know, utilize kind of the elements of my build that are pretty strong, like Power Stance Great Spears, the fact that Madness buildup is going to give me potentially a free jumping attack. So that's kind of all on my mind. And here, as we're just kind of going for the one-on-one with this blue here, we see the first Phantom has been sent home. So what I think happened is the host did not want me to get the extra heals from a dead Phantom, and when it looked like that blue was going to die from the PvE, the host sent them home. So an unfortunate moment, and here I'm pretty sure what was happening was the host was watching this fight. They saw that I got this nice crouching attack there, and then sent this other blue home before I could kill them. So another unfortunate moment, and that's kind of a cheeky tactic that we see from hosts as a way to just kind of add a little salt when a Phantom is not doing well against an invader. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's cheating, but it does feel a little bit abusive, because you do have a situation where, you know, an invader is going to be trading with a blue, and kind of the reward for, you know, winning against that blue is going to be some of that HP back, but if they get sent home, there's no HP that comes back. So I wouldn't mind seeing a change made by From Software to give you flasks when a blue is sent home, because I just don't really see how that would be problematic in any way. If you're sending blues homes, then like you're pretty much only doing it to punish invaders, and I don't think that's really like an intended mechanic of sending a blue home. But I don't know, it's very hard to kind of read into the minds of From Software, and maybe that's just not something that's on the top of their priority list, even if they are aware of it. So we do end up seeing eventually the host does re-summon another phantom back into the world, and eventually we just kind of run away, catch back up to them. This is why this invasion took 15 minutes, but finally we have a moment to just kind of dodge all these floating skulls that seem to last forever and go for a nice jumping attack on this Runark host. They've pulled out a scythe at this point. I think the power stance straight swords would have been a better option. We get a jumping attack, and then finally, as they're kind of panic rolling away, we go for a running heavy, and that allows us to get the madness proc and just a cheeky single poke. And yeah, there was a kind of good sport from the Phantom that just gives me a friendly wave. Lastly, we just have two invasions that I wanted to include that didn't make it into my last video. So this was a mirror match between another kind of madness build. So they've got the seal in one hand, they also have Vike Spear in the other. So I thought this was just kind of a fun one to include, because you don't really see that type of thing too much. So here we do get a ravioli step to kind of combo 2 hits, and then we get a third hit that is a nice madness proc for the win. And this next duel is just going to be against another kind of fairly similar setup where they have the shield poke setup where they've got the fingerprint shield as well as a lance. So rather than a shield, I've got an offhand seal, and we'll just kind of, you know, do our best to deal with such a large shield. So we can see the swap to the hammer talisman, which is going to be a great option against a shield because it's going to do more stamina damage to that shield and means that you're more likely to get the guard break. However, the neutral jumps are a great option against something that's very pokey like this. And we also go for one of our incantations. It's a little bit of a trade there, but it does mean we're able to get more of that madness buildup that's going to be extremely helpful, and that's going to go through the shield. And we end up coming out with the W here for the last duel of the showcase.